Let's bring you into the conversation. Now, of course, gerrymandering matters most once a decade when a census is taken, and we look at who's in the districts, what the population shifts have been. We just had a big census. In New York, what is this going to mean for the gerrymandering, for the way the districts are drawn?
Right,
are we expecting big changes?
Well, it depends on who's in power. Because the way it works in New York, basically the leadership of each house in Albany, the leadership in the Assembly and leadership in the Senate, essentially gets to draw the lines for their respective houses. So whoever's in charge in the Assembly, which has been Democrats for a long time, basically draw the lines in a way that protects their members, protects incumbents. They draw the lines to try to make sure that their members get reelected, and to basically try to further their control of that House. Now, the state Senate is a different matter because it's very closely divided between, right now the Senate Democrats have a very slim majority, so depending on who wins control of the House in the elections this November will play a huge part in how things play out over the next 10 years, because the leadership will then be in charge of drawing the lines. And it's a process that takes a little over a year. It'll begin early next year when the census data actually starts to come back.
We don't know those numbers yet.
Right, but there's a big push right now to try to reform the process before then and basically take it out of the hands of the leadership in Albany and have it done by some kind of impartial, bipartisan citizen commission who is not beholden to any political interests.
That's what people want to do, is what you're saying.
Right.
If it's unethical, so as I'm assuming a great body of people believe it to be, is there a push nationwide to change it, or is it all state by state? I know California, Governor Schwarzenegger had an effort in Proposition 11 to come up with a similar independent panel. Right. So is this a nationwide thing, or is it?
Well, it's really, and Jeff can jump in here too. It's basically state by state as to how the lines are drawn in each particular state. So different states have very different systems. And some states have been reformed. Iowa is one state that's always held up as sort of a model of how things maybe should be done because it's done by an independent group. And politicians
is New York held up as the worst?
It's probably considered one of the worst.
It's one of the worst. I think Florida may have us beat by a little bit. Georgia's also really bad too. But I think there are many different kinds of models, and I think it comes down to the specificities of an individual state. Because every state has different kinds of communities and different kinds of interests and different kinds of histories, and they'll have different priorities in what they want to see in a redistricting plan. And so, you couldn't take the Iowa model, which is just two very nice gentlemen who are bureaucrats who draw the lines. You couldn't take that and bring that here. Because I think...
I do think that there is significant momentum, though, for the changing of the way in which we draw lines in New York State and moving toward a more nonpartisan, independent-based model. There was legislation introduced just this very session by Assemblyman Mike Gianaris from Queens that would create a nonpartisan redistricting commission that actually moved out of its initial committee, Government Operations, and is now before Ways and Means. The Speaker, under his leadership, has indicated an openness to changing the way that things are done during the next redistricting process. It's going to be up to us in the legislature to create the momentum along with the advocates to actually change the idea into law.
But still a long way off. And when Bobby and I were talking about his pieces earlier this week, he was saying that a lot of people argue that the system in New York as it stands is the reason that Albany is so dysfunctional. There's so much public outrage about Albany, but the public may not realize exactly why this, system that is in place. Would you say that's true, that the reason that there's so much sort of entrenched gridlock in Albany is because of the gerrymandering system?
Well, there are a lot of people of goodwill in Albany, but there certainly are folks who perhaps are there who would not otherwise be there if the lines weren't drawn in a way to protect incumbents. And so if we're going to change the way that business is done on behalf of the people in Albany, one of the ways to do that is to change the way that people are selected and create a process that's more open, less rigged, and less fixed as it relates to creating just the tremendous advantages for incumbents to get reelected, even if they may have a mediocre or less than stellar record of accomplishment.
I wanted to go back to California and this Proposition 11, which I understand was really the impetus for you getting into this topic in the movie in the first place.
We followed the whole campaign in the film for Proposition 11. And what's really interesting is that there are two redistricting propositions on the ballot in California this November. One, which is Proposition 20, which would extend the jurisdiction of the Prop 11 Commission to cover congressional districts. There's also Prop 27, which is sponsored by the California congressional delegation, especially the Democratic members of it, which would disband the Proposition 11 Commission before it has a chance to even try to draw districts that are better for everybody. So the powers that be are so nervous and so afraid of this commission and allowing citizens to draw the lines that they're just trying to confuse everybody and scuttle the whole thing.
Well, that's a big problem, isn't it, in discussing this issue, as we talked about at the beginning. Do voters really understand? I mean,
I think it's complicated, but it's not as complicated as people like to make it sound. I think now we also have an unprecedented opportunity because people now have access to mapping software, and people use Google Maps and know what their communities look like, and so they could go in and draw their own plans. Where we've never had that chance before.
I wanted to play a clip from Arnold Schwarzenegger, Governor Schwarzenegger, who was a big proponent of Prop 11. If we can just play that quickly.
The legislators have picked the voters rather than the voters picking the politicians. What the problem with that is, it doesn't create competition. And it's the same as if you have Michael Phelps being at the starting line in the Olympics and there are no other swimmers around. He wouldn't have broken all of those records, trust me. Competition creates performance, and this is what we need here.
So celebrating a victory there, but could be undone in the current election. Do you think that's going to happen? It sounds like California made progress on this.
Well,
and now
we hope it will pass, and we're actually the film is working closely with the Proposition 20 campaign to make sure that it does pass. They've actually just mailed 660,000 copies of the film to voters in California to help educate them about the issue.
Right.
And we'll see what happens.
And in general, and all of you weigh in, we have about 30 seconds left, is the independent panel commission the model? Will that fix gerrymandering and redistricting as it stands today?
I think it's the best we've got.
I think the problem is in New York, California is different because they can do voter referendums, but in New York, the legislature itself has to change the law. So you're asking the people who have the power to vote to relinquish that power, which is always a tough thing to do.
Yeah, but there's so much heat on the state lawmakers right now to be, have integrity and transparency. Maybe that will be something they will concede.
If it's going to happen.
Hakeem, what do you think?
It's a step in the right direction, though we have to be sensitive to the fact that there's great diversity in the state of New York, and individual legislators do represent that diversity. So it's more complex, as Jeff has said, than in Iowa. But I do think, again, we're moving in the right direction. The current governor supports it. Andrew Cuomo, the Democratic nominee, supports nonpartisan redistricting. And so the momentum is definitely there. We'll have to build upon it and see what happens. Anything can happen in Albany, as you know.
Right, and definitely such a complex issue, and you're so brave to take this on as a filmmaker.
Thanks.
I'm really impressed. When does it open, and where can we see it?
You could see it tomorrow night or Saturday night if you happen to be in Woodstock. It's playing at this great film festival in Woodstock, New York, and it'll be in theaters nationwide come October 15th.
All right, and it's called?
It's called Gerrymandering.
Look it up. All right, thank you all for being with us for that. It is time now for a break, and later on, after a public skirmish between Republican candidate Carl Palladino and a reporter, the race for governor is getting uglier. So how low can we expect it to go? The four members of our Reporters Roundtable will weigh in. Stay with us for that.